before we get to our top 10 offensive line rankings, Kyle's takes on that, we had some big news in the football world. Some big contracts being given out. Not to free agents, though. These are guys who weren't free agents just yet, and it's two Bengals. Jamar Chase signs the highest deal ever recorded for a non-quarterback. 4 years, $161 million. And T. Higgins, well, he fired his agent a few months ago, hired Jamar Chase's agent, and reportedly said, we're a package deal now. If you want Jamar Chase to resign here, you're going to have to give me the contract I want to. And he gets a 4-year, $115 million extension in his own right. The trio, the triplets in Cincy, well, they're going to be there for the next 4 seasons. And to me, this reminds me of, first thing I thought of was like mid-2000s Colts, when they had Reggie Wayne, Marvin Harrison, Peyton Manning. They may not have won a lot of Super Bowls. You know, they weren't there at the end of the dance a lot. But when you got that trio, you will be in the dance a lot. You will be in the playoffs, and you'll be fun. And this, to me, was a deal that I always wanted to get done for a guy when I lived in Cincinnati for 8 years. This was the first time they really had excitement for a Bengals team. And it's like, when you have this trio, you can have a rotating cast of characters around these guys. If you got Burrow, if you got Chase, if you got T, you're going to have an elite offense, and you're going to be in every single game.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And, I mean, you have to imagine the talking points in and around the league are like, well, we can also pay our good players. Look at Cincinnati. They found a way to make it happen. In a day and age where so many of these good players become so expensive and so valuable, they have to be auctioned off to whoever can afford them.
Okay.
Good on the Cincinnati Bengals for making the most of the talent that they have in-house. The strongest point of their roster is the quarterback. The second strongest is Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So they found a way to lock them up. It's a no-brainer. We've been saying that week in, week out.
Had to get it done. Now, Trey Hendrickson, will they get that done? TBD. We mentioned the Bengals' big money deals off the top of the show. T. Higgins, 4 years, $115 million. Jamar Chase, 4 years, $161 million. That one, if you're curious, makes him $1 million higher paid than Myles Garrett.
I love that.
All about that if you're the agent negotiating that deal, getting your guy to be the highest paid, even if for a month, the way Myles Garrett was, you always got to do it. But now that turns the attention to Trey Hendrickson, because the man was the one-man defense for the Cincinnati Bengals last year, but he's also 30 years old. His deal will not be in the range of T. Higgins. It won't be in the range of Jamar Chase's. I think the number where he's going to come in is going to be very similar to what Danielle Hunter got last year from the Houston Texans. Danielle Hunter was 30 years old, hitting free agency. He got 2 years, $49 million. I think that's the sweet spot for Trey Hendrickson. He's obviously on a $21 million deal this upcoming season, but again, you're thinking the number is going to be somewhere in that $25, $26 million for a couple, maybe 3 years, 75, somewhere in that range. Do they need to get this done if they're Cincinnati Bengals?
Dude, a lot of people lead with age in these conversations. You should lead with production. That red highlighted statistic, 17 and a half sacks. You can't fake production. There's no way that you can go out and try to manufacture that kind of production. 17 and a half sacks for Trey Hendrickson in a damn near losing effort all season for the Cincinnati Bengals. That's a warrior. That's a leader for your defense. He's somebody that can rally the troops. And with that three-headed monster retained on the offensive side of the ball, it's going to be ping pong, back and forth. A lot of passing against this Bengals team. What do you want if you've got a pass? If you've got a pass situation defensively, you want a guy who gets production. 17 and a half sacks. Lead with that in this conversation. I do think they have to get the deal done for Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah, the problem is though for the Cincinnati Bengals, and everyone's saying, you know, they didn't make the playoffs last year with T and Jamar, and now T was banged up for a good portion of the year, and you had this weird contract situation looming over for the team. And so if they get it all done, I think you'll have a much better locker room situation going on this upcoming fall, and I think they will make the playoffs should they get all those deals done. But they just got to draft better, man. If you go back and just look, since the Jamar Chase pick, and even literally in that 2021 NFL draft where they went Jack Carman, Joseph Osai, the 2 picks after that in the top 75, they don't have an impact player since then. They have not drafted one single impact player in the past 3 drafts. Amarius Mims, TBD, obviously last year, too soon to say, but Miles Murphy, DJ Turner, Jordan Battle the year prior, Dax Hill, Cam Taylor-Britt, Zach Carter the year before that. It's like, that's where they're losing games. That's where they've lost sort of the plot since going to that 2021 Super Bowl. So if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, yeah, you need to get the Trey Hendrickson deal done, but this is a draft that is a crucial draft if you really are going to get back into Super Bowl contention.
It's clear to me that within the Bengals organization there lives 2 wolves, one of which drafts incredibly good football players and one of which just drafts absolute you-know-whats. And it's unfortunate because some of the most talented guys in the NFL are on the Cincinnati Bengals, and we're still having the conversation about hot seat at the coaching spot there in Cincinnati, whether it's the DC getting fired or, their head coach being on the hot seat this coming year. You would love to think that with a guy like Joe Burrow, the offense that they have, and a guy like Trey Hendrickson on the defensive side of the ball, they would be able to fill in some semblance of a winning roster. And I think with some changes schematically on the defensive side of the ball, we could be looking at a more competitive team week in, week out. But at the end of the day, it wasn't Lou's fault. It was the fact that they just didn't have any players on that defensive side of the ball.
I think Duke Tobin, the de facto GM, they don't technically have a GM for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Been there forever.
He fell into the trap that I saw all too often in Green Bay, which is I have Aaron Rodgers. I have Joe Burrow. Of course I'm going to have a good offense. After that 2021 year, they're like, of course we're always going to have a good offense. Let me just get a good defense on the other side of the ball to make this work. And only draft defensive players. The next 2 drafts, all their top 100 picks were defensive players, even this past year. Yeah, they drafted Maris Mims in the first round, but then Chris Jenkins in the second round. Like, they've gone heavy on defense. But if they would have just rebuilt this offensive line through the draft, if they would have maybe added a tight end
instead of signing free agents that were left to walk from other teams, like I think about our guy Orlando Brown Jr., who's a good player, a guy who's earned his keep in the NFL. But if you're looking to really up the notch, up the ante a little bit at that position, it's going to be within your own ranks, from within your own ranks. And you look at teams like Philadelphia, that's what they do. They draft well, they develop these young guys. So I'm glad they got Mims, but let's hope that he can develop into the stud that we'd hope he was.